The lower docks of Horizon's Edge always smelled like rust and old fuel. Kang Ti-ho had worked here for 3 years and he still could not get used to it. But the pay was good and the work was simple. Move boxes from one place to another. Do not ask questions. Go home. Ti-ho was 32 years old. He had short black hair and tired eyes. His hands were rough from years of hard work. Before he came to the station, he was a medic in the military back on Earth. He had seen blood. He had seen death. He had seen things that still visited him in his dreams. The cargo bay was peaceful compared to all that. Today was like any other day. He pushed a heavy cart filled with metal containers. The lights above him flickered. They always flickered down here. The station was old and nobody cared enough to fix things in the lower levels. Then he heard a sound. It was small, like a bird trying to sing but afraid someone might hear. Ti-ho stopped walking. He turned his head and listened. The sound came again. It was not a bird. It was a child crying. Ti-ho left his cart and followed the noise. He walked past rows of storage units until he reached a narrow corridor. The lights here were even worse. Some of them did not work at all. At the end of the corridor, he saw her. She was small, maybe 6 or 7 years old, but she was not human. Her skin was pale silver, almost glowing in the dark. She had 4 arms, 2 on each side, and her eyes were large and purple. She was a Norian. Ti-ho had seen them before on the upper decks. They were tall, proud, and did not talk to humans very much. But this one was just a child, and she was crying. Ti-ho walked closer. He kept his steps slow so he would not scare her. The child looked up at him. Her purple eyes were wet with tears. "Hey," Ti-ho said softly, "are you lost?" The child did not answer. She just stared at him. Maybe she did not understand his words. Many alien species did not learn human languages. Ti-ho knelt down to be at her level. He pointed at himself. "Ti-ho," he said. Then he pointed at her with a questioning look. "Lyra," the child whispered. "Lyra," Ti-ho repeated. He gave her a small smile. "Good name. Where is your mother, Lyra?" Before the child could answer, Ti-ho heard heavy footsteps behind him. He turned around slowly. 3 figures blocked the corridor. They were Keth. Ti-ho felt his stomach drop. The Keth were reptilian creatures. Their skin was dark green and covered in thick scales. They had yellow eyes with thin black slits in the center. Each one was at least 7 feet tall and built like a wall of muscle. They wore leather armor and carried weapons on their belts. The Keth had a bad reputation. Everyone on the station knew to stay away from them. They were raiders, criminals, and slavers. They took what they wanted and hurt anyone who got in their way. The one in the front smiled. His teeth were sharp and yellow. "Look what we have here," he said. His voice was deep and rough. "A little silver flower all alone, and a human playing hero." Ti-ho stood up slowly. He kept his body between the Keth and the child. "She is lost," Ti-ho said. His voice was calm. "I will take her to her mother, no trouble." The Keth laughed, all 3 of them. The sound echoed in the narrow corridor like thunder. "No trouble," the leader said. "We came here for the child. Our captain wants a Norian pet. They are rare, expensive, and this one walked right into our hands." Ti-ho did not move. "She is not for sale." The Keth stopped laughing. The leader tilted his head and looked at Ti-ho like he was seeing him for the first time. "You are human," the Keth said slowly. "Small, weak, breakable. You have no weapons, no armor, no friends. Why do you stand in our way?" Ti-ho knew the Keth was right. He was just a cargo worker. He had no gun, no knife, nothing but his 2 hands. The Keth could kill him without breaking a sweat. But behind him, Lyra was still crying. He could hear her small breaths. He could feel her fear. He thought about walking away. It would be smart. It would be safe. No one would blame him. Everyone knew you did not fight the Keth. You just looked the other way and hoped they did not notice you. But Ti-ho could not make his feet move. He had looked away before. In the war. In the hospital. In all the dark places where people needed help and he was too tired to give it, he had looked away and people had died. Not this time. Walk away, Tiho said. His voice was steady. Find another pet, this one is going home. The Keth leader stared at him for a long moment. Then he smiled again. This time there was no humor in it. I was hoping you would say that, the Keth said. I like breaking humans, you scream so beautifully. He turned to Lyra and spoke in a language Tiho did not understand. Then he looked back at Tiho. Last chance, human, move, or we make you move. Tiho glanced back at Lyra. Her purple eyes were wide with terror. She was shaking so hard she could barely stand. He wanted to tell her to run, to hide, to find her mother. But he knew she would not move. She was too scared. If he ran, she would stay frozen and the Keth would take her. So Tiho turned back to face the three raiders. He raised his fists. They felt small and useless against creatures twice his size. I am not moving, he said. The first punch came faster than he expected. It hit him in the chest and sent him flying backward. His back slammed against the metal wall. Pain exploded through his body. But he did not fall. He pushed himself off the wall and stood up straight. The Keth looked surprised. Tiho spit blood on the floor. His chest hurt. Something inside might already be broken, but he was still standing. Is that all you have? He asked. The Keth leader's yellow eyes narrowed. No, he said, that was just the beginning. They came at him all at once. Tiho knew he could not win. He knew he would not survive. But as the first blow knocked him to his knees, he made himself a promise. He would stand between them and the child. He would take every hit, every kick, every broken bone. Until someone came to help, or until his body gave out completely. He would not let them touch her. The first minute was the worst. Tiho had been in fights before. He had trained in the military. He knew how to take a punch, but the Keth were not punching. They were destroying. The leader grabbed him by the throat and lifted him off the ground. Tiho could not breathe. His feet kicked in the air. Black spots danced in front of his eyes. Then the Keth threw him against the wall like a broken toy. Tiho felt his ribs crack. 1, 2, maybe 3. The pain was so sharp it made his vision go white. He fell to the floor and gasped for air. Behind him, Lyra screamed. Tiho forced himself to turn his head. The child was still there, still frozen. Her silver skin had turned pale gray with fear. Her purple eyes were fixed on him. He had to get up. He had to keep standing. His arms shook as he pushed himself off the floor. Blood dripped from his mouth and made little red spots on the metal ground. His whole body screamed at him to stay down, to give up, to let the darkness take him. But he stood up. The Keth stared at him. For just a moment they looked confused. You should stay down, human, the leader said. It will hurt less. Tiho wiped the blood from his chin. Come and make me. They came. The second Keth hit him in the stomach. Tiho felt something tear inside. He doubled over, coughing blood. Before he could straighten up, the third Keth kicked him in the back. He flew forward and crashed into a pile of old cargo boxes. The boxes fell on top of him. Metal edges cut his skin. Sharp corners dug into his flesh. For a moment, everything was dark and heavy and painful. But even under the pile of broken boxes, Tiho could hear Lyra crying. He pushed the boxes away, slowly, painfully. His left arm did not work right anymore. It hung at a strange angle, broken probably, maybe in more than one place. But he still had his right arm, and he still had his legs. He crawled out of the pile and stood up again. 5 minutes had passed. The Keth were not laughing anymore. They were looking at him with something new in their yellow eyes, something that might have been respect, or maybe just curiosity. Why do you keep getting up? The leader asked. You cannot win, you know this, your body is breaking. Soon you will not be able to move at all. Why do you fight? Tiho looked at him. Blood ran down his face from a cut on his forehead. His breathing was rough and wet. Every time he inhaled, pain shot through his chest like fire. "Because she is scared," T-Ho said. His voice was barely a whisper. "Because she is small. Because no one else is coming to help her." The Keth leader tilted his head. "But you are not her family. You are not her species. She means nothing to you." "She is a child," T-Ho said. "That is enough." The Keth did not understand. T-Ho could see it in their faces. To them, the weak existed to serve the strong. A child from another species was just cargo, property, something to be sold. They could not understand why a human would bleed for a stranger. "Interesting," the leader said slowly. "Let us see how long your strange human honor lasts." They beat him for 10 more minutes. They broke his right leg, then his left. They cracked more ribs. They split open his skin in a dozen places. They hit him so hard that blood came out of his ears. And every single time, T-Ho got back up. His legs could not hold him anymore, so he used his arms to drag himself. His arms were too broken to lift him, so he used the wall to push himself upright. When his body finally refused to stand, he sat with his back against the wall and his legs stretched out in front of him. But he always stayed between the Keth and the child. 20 minutes passed. Lyra had stopped screaming. She was still crying, but silently now. Her small body shook with each sob. Her 4 hands were pressed against her mouth. She did not understand what was happening. She did not understand why this strange human kept putting himself in front of her, why he would not let them take her, why he would not just fall down and stay down. But somewhere in her young mind, she understood one thing. This human was dying for her. 25 minutes passed. The Keth had stopped hitting T-Ho. They stood around him in a circle, looking down at what they had done. T-Ho did not look human anymore. His face was swollen and purple. Blood covered every part of him. His clothes were torn and soaked with red. His bones stuck out at wrong angles. But his eyes were still open, and he was still watching them. "Why will you not die?" the leader asked. There was something strange in his voice now, something that sounded almost like fear. T-Ho tried to smile. It came out wrong because his lips were too broken. "Humans are stubborn," he whispered. "Did no one tell you?" The Keth looked at each other. Something passed between them without words. "This is taking too long," one of them said. "Someone will come. We need to take the child and leave." The leader nodded slowly. He stepped over T-Ho's broken body and walked toward Lyra. T-Ho could not stand. He could not even crawl anymore. But as the Keth walked past him, he reached out with his one hand that still worked and grabbed the leader's ankle. The Keth looked down at him. "What are you doing, human? You cannot even move." "I can hold you," T-Ho said. His fingers tightened on the Keth's leg. "As long as I am breathing, you do not touch her." The Keth kicked his hand away. T-Ho heard more bones break. But before the Keth could take another step, T-Ho grabbed his ankle again. "I will break every bone in your body," the Keth said. "Do it," T-Ho whispered. "I will still hold on." 30 minutes passed. The Keth tried everything. They stomped on his hand. They dragged him across the floor. They kicked him in the head until his vision went blurry. But every time they stepped toward the child, that broken human somehow found a way to stop them. He was not strong, he was not fast, he could barely stay conscious. But he would not stop. 37 minutes after the first punch, a sound echoed through the corridor. Heavy boots, shouting voices, the flash of energy weapons. Norian security had finally arrived. Lyra's mother had felt her daughter's fear from across the station. She had sent every guard she could find. They had torn through the lower decks like a storm, following the child's mental distress signal. The Keth took one look at the 12 armed Norians running toward them and made a choice. They were raiders, not soldiers. They knew when a fight was lost. They ran. The Norians did not chase them. They were too focused on the small silver child, and the broken human body lying in front of her. Tiho heard voices above him. He could not understand the words. Everything was too far away now, too quiet. But he could see Lyra. She was safe. The Norians were picking her up. She was reaching for him with her small hands, crying something he could not hear. Tiho smiled. A real smile this time, even though it hurt more than anything. Then his eyes closed, and the darkness finally took him. But even as he fell unconscious, his body stayed where it was, between the child and the door, protecting her even in sleep. Because some things were more important than living. And for Kang Tiho, protecting that small, scared, silver child had been worth every broken bone. Vellani ran through the station corridors faster than she had ever run in her life. Her long legs carried her past crowds of aliens who jumped out of her way. Her forearms pushed through anyone too slow to move. Her daughter, her Lyra, something terrible had happened. Vellani was tall, even for a Norian female. She stood over 7 feet high, with luminescent silver skin and eyes the color of deep space. She wore the dark blue robes of a diplomat's family, though her husband had been dead for 2 years now. She had felt Lyra's fear from the other side of the station. The mental bond between Norian mothers and daughters was powerful. When Lyra was scared, Vellani felt it in her bones. When Lyra was terrified, Vellani felt like she was dying. She reached the medical bay and burst through the doors. Inside, she saw a scene she did not expect. Her daughter was sitting on a medical bed. She was not hurt, no cuts, no bruises, not a single mark on her silver skin, but she was crying harder than Vellani had ever seen. And she was holding the hand of a human. The human lay on a bed next to her. He was inside a recovery pod, a clear glass tube filled with healing liquid. Through the glass, Vellani could see what remained of him. He was not in good shape. His face was swollen and purple. His body was covered in bandages and tubes. Machines beeped around him, showing numbers that even Vellani knew were bad. "Mother," Lyra cried out when she saw her. She jumped off her bed and ran to Vellani, wrapping all 4 arms around her mother's legs. Vellani dropped to her knees and held her daughter close. For a long moment she just breathed in the scent of her child's hair, alive, safe, whole. "What happened?" Vellani whispered. "Who did this? Who hurt you?" "They did not hurt me," Lyra said between sobs. "They hurt him, the human. He would not let them touch me. He stood in front of me the whole time, even when they were breaking him. Even when he could not stand anymore, he would not move." Vellani looked at the human in the recovery pod. She had heard of humans, of course. Everyone in the galaxy knew about them. They were a young species from a small planet. They lived short lives, maybe 80 years at most. They were weak compared to most other races. They had no natural weapons, no special abilities, no technology worth mentioning. Most Norians considered them barely more than animals. "Why?" Vellani asked. "Why would a human do this?" "I do not know," Lyra said. "I was lost, I was scared, and he just came. He would not leave me." Vellani stood up slowly. She walked to the recovery pod and looked down at the broken human inside. A doctor approached her. He was a small alien with gray skin and 6 eyes, one of the station's medical officers. "You are the child's mother?" he asked. "Yes, what is his condition?" The doctor looked at his tablet and shook his head slowly. "He should be dead. By all logic, he should have died in the first 10 minutes. He has 17 broken bones, including his spine in 3 places. Both lungs collapsed at some point. He lost enough blood to kill 2 humans. His brain was without oxygen for almost a full minute." "But he is alive," Vellani said. "Somehow, yes. We have never seen anything like it. His body kept going long after it should have stopped, like his mind refused to let his body die." Vellani stared at the human's face. Even through the swelling and the bruises, she could see he was not a warrior. He had no scars from battle, no muscles built for fighting. He was just an ordinary man. an ordinary man who had stood against 3 Keth raiders for 37 minutes. "I want to see the security footage," Vellani said. The doctor hesitated. "It is difficult to watch. I need to see what he did for my daughter." The doctor nodded and led her to a small room with a screen on the wall. He pressed a few buttons, and the video began to play. Vellani watched all of it, every second, every punch, every time the human fell and got back up. She watched him stand when his legs were broken. She watched him crawl when his arms stopped working. She watched him grab the Keth's ankle with his shattered hand, over and over, refusing to let them pass. She watched him position his broken body between the Keth and her daughter, even when he could not move anymore, even when he could barely keep his eyes open. When the video ended, Vellani realized her face was wet. She was crying. She had not cried since her husband's funeral. "He is awake sometimes," the doctor said quietly. "For a few minutes at a time. Every time he wakes up, he asks the same question." "What question?" "He asks if the little one is okay." Vellani closed her eyes. In her culture, protecting another person's child was the highest honor. To suffer for that child was a sacred bond. The Norians had many words for different types of love and loyalty, but the deepest word was Kelvari, a bond created through sacrifice. This human, this cargo worker from a primitive planet, had created Kelvari with her daughter. By her people's laws, he was now part of her family. His blood had been spilled for her bloodline. She owed him a debt that could never be fully repaid. But it was more than that. As Vellani watched the video again, she felt something else growing inside her, something she had not felt in a very long time. Respect. Her people thought humans were weak, but this man had done something that no Norian would do. He had chosen to suffer. He had chosen to break. He had chosen to die, slowly and painfully, for a child he did not know. That was not weakness. That was something else entirely. Vellani returned to the medical bay. Lyra was still sitting beside the human's recovery pod, holding his hand through a small opening in the glass. "His name is T-Ho," Lyra said without looking up. "He told me before they came. He was very kind." Vellani pulled a chair next to her daughter and sat down. She looked at the broken human floating in the healing liquid. His eyes were closed. His chest rose and fell slowly with each breath. "What are you doing, Mother?" Lyra asked. "I am waiting," Vellani said. "For what?" "For him to wake up. I need to thank him." Lyra leaned her head against her mother's arm. "Will he be okay?" Vellani did not know the answer to that question. The doctors said his survival was already a miracle. His recovery would take months, maybe years. His body might never be the same. But somehow, she believed he would live. A man who had refused to die for 37 minutes would not give up now. "Yes," she said softly, "I think he will be okay." They sat together in silence, mother and daughter, watching over the human who had saved them both. Outside, the station continued its normal routines. Ships came and went. Cargo was loaded and unloaded. Aliens of 100 different species lived their lives without knowing what had happened in the lower docks. But in the quiet of the medical bay, something had changed. A bond had been formed, a debt had been created. And Vellani was beginning to understand that humans were not what she had always believed them to be. T-Ho opened his eyes slowly. Everything was blurry and bright. His whole body felt strange, like he was floating in warm water. He tried to move his arms, but they did not respond. Then he remembered. The Keth, the child, the beating, the endless minutes of pain. "The little one," he whispered. His voice sounded broken and far away. "Is she okay?" A face appeared above him. Silver skin, purple eyes, 4 arms. But this was not the child. This was a woman, tall and beautiful and looking at him like he was the strangest thing she had ever seen. "She is safe," the woman said, "because of you." Tiho closed his eyes and let out a long breath. Safe. The child was safe. That was all that mattered. Good, he said. Then he fell back asleep. He woke up many times over the next few days. Each time, the silver woman was there. Sometimes the child was there too, sitting beside his recovery pod with her small face pressed against the glass. Slowly he learned their names. The woman was Vellani, the child was Lyra. They were mother and daughter. Vellani's husband had died 2 years ago. They were traveling alone through the galaxy, trying to find a new home. You should not be here, Tiho said one day. He was out of the recovery pod now, lying on a regular bed. His body was wrapped in bandages and supported by metal frames. He could not walk yet. Maybe he would never walk normally again. You must have important things to do, important people to see. Vellani sat in her usual chair beside his bed. She had been there every day for 3 weeks. There is nothing more important than this, she said. You saved my daughter. In my culture, that creates a bond called Kelvari, a sacred debt. Your blood was spilled for my bloodline. You are now part of my family. Tiho stared at her. I do not want to be part of your family. I just did what anyone would do. Vellani shook her head slowly. I watched the security footage. 43 beings passed that corridor while you were being beaten. 43. Not one stopped. Not one called for help. You are not what anyone would do. You are different. Tiho did not know what to say. He looked away from her, uncomfortable with the attention. I am just a cargo worker, he said. I move boxes for a living. There is nothing special about me. You stood against 3 Keth raiders for 37 minutes, Vellani said. You had 17 broken bones. You should have died many times, but you kept getting up. You kept fighting. You kept protecting a child you did not know. That is not ordinary. That is extraordinary. Tiho closed his eyes. He did not feel extraordinary. He felt tired and broken and useless. I was scared, he admitted quietly. The whole time, I was so scared I could barely think. I just kept telling myself to get up. One more time, just one more time. That is courage, Vellani said. Not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. Tiho opened his eyes and looked at her. She was watching him with an expression he could not read, something soft and curious and almost warm. What do you want from me? He asked. I want to repay my debt. I want to offer you a place in my household. You would have protection, resources, a life beyond carrying cargo in the lower decks. Tiho shook his head. I am not looking for payment. I did not save your daughter for a reward. I know, Vellani said. That is why I want to give you one. Before Tiho could argue, the door opened and Lyra ran inside. She was carrying a small box in her 4 hands, and her face was bright with excitement. You are awake, she said. She climbed onto a chair beside his bed and held out the box. I brought you something. The doctor said humans like sweet things. Tiho took the box with his one working hand. Inside were small round candies in different colors. He recognized them from the human section of the station market. Someone had gone through a lot of trouble to find them. Thank you, Lyra, he said. He managed a small smile. They are my favorite. Lyra beamed at him. I knew it. Mother said humans are hard to understand, but I think you are easy. You like sweet things and you do not like bad people hurting children. Tiho laughed. It hurt his ribs, but he could not stop himself. That is a good summary. Over the next few weeks, Lyra visited him every day. She asked him endless questions about Earth, about humans, about his life before the station. Why did humans only have 2 arms? Did all humans have black hair like him? What was rain like? What was a dog? Why did humans laugh when they were happy instead of changing colors like Norians? Tiho answered every question. He found that he enjoyed talking to her. She reminded him of his little sister back on Earth, the one he had not seen in 7 years. Vellani watched them from the corner of the room. She never interrupted. She just watched with those deep purple eyes that seemed to see everything. One day, after Lyra had fallen asleep in her chair, Vellani spoke softly. She has not smiled like this since her father died. Tiho looked at the sleeping child. Her silver face was peaceful. Her 4 arms were curled around a pillow she had brought from her quarters. "She is a good kid," he said. "She has nightmares," Vellani continued. "About that day in the corridor, she dreams about the Keth taking her, but every time in the dream you appear, you stand between her and them, and she wakes up knowing she is safe." Tiho did not know what to say. He had nightmares too, but in his dreams he did not get up fast enough. In his dreams, the Keth reached Lyra before the Norians arrived. "I just did what I had to do," he said. "That is what makes you remarkable," Vellani said. "You do what you have to do, no matter the cost. My people spend their whole lives avoiding pain, avoiding sacrifice, avoiding anything that might hurt them. We live long lives, sometimes 500 years. We have learned to be careful, to be safe, to never risk ourselves for others." She paused and looked at him with something like wonder. "But you humans live short lives, maybe 80 years, and yet you throw yourselves into danger for strangers. You break your bodies for children you have never met. You treat death like a minor inconvenience if the cause is right." Tiho shrugged. "Maybe that is because we do not have time to be careful. We only get one life. We have to make it count." Vellani stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled, a real smile that lit up her silver face like starlight. "I think I am beginning to understand humans," she said. Tiho found himself smiling back. "I do not understand them at all, and I am one." They both laughed softly, careful not to wake Lyra. In the quiet of the medical bay, something was changing. It was small and slow, like a flower growing in winter, but it was real. Tiho looked at Vellani and saw not an alien, not a debt, not a cultural obligation. He saw a woman who had lost her husband, who was raising her daughter alone, who was scared and proud and trying her best. And Vellani looked at Tiho and saw not a human, not a cargo worker, not a broken body in a hospital bed. She saw a man who had given everything for her daughter, who expected nothing in return, who was stubborn and kind and strange in ways she wanted to understand. Neither of them said anything about it. It was too soon, too new, too fragile. But they both felt it growing in the silence between them. 2 months passed. Tiho could walk again. The doctors said it was another miracle. His spine had healed in ways that should not have been possible. His bones had grown back stronger than before. Even his lungs worked almost perfectly now. He still had scars. Some of them would never fade. But he was alive and he was moving, and that was more than anyone had expected. He returned to his small room in the worker section of the station. It was not much. A bed, a desk, a window that looked out at the stars. He had lived here for 3 years and he had never decorated it. There was nothing on the walls, nothing that made it feel like home. Because it was not home, it was just a place to sleep between shifts. He went back to work in the cargo bay. His supervisors had saved his job, mostly because everyone on the station had heard what he did. The human who fought the Keth, the cargo worker who protected the alien child. He was famous now, though he did not want to be. People looked at him differently, some with respect, some with confusion, some with fear. The Keth had left the station after that night. They knew the Norians would hunt them if they stayed. But before they left, the leader had sent Tiho a message. "We will remember you, human. No one has ever done what you did. We do not know if you are brave or stupid, but we will not forget." Tiho deleted the message without replying. Vellani still came to see him, sometimes with Lyra, sometimes alone. She brought him food from the upper decks, meals he could not afford on his worker's salary. She asked him about his day. She listened when he talked about nothing important. He did not understand why she kept coming. The debt had been acknowledged. The Kelvari had been declared. By her culture's rules, she did not owe him anything more. But still she came. Lyra had started calling him Uncle Tiho. She ran to him whenever she saw him, wrapping all four arms around his waist and refusing to let go. She told him about her lessons, about the other children on the station, about the dreams she had that were not nightmares anymore. He did not deserve any of it. He was just a cargo worker, a nobody from Earth, a man with nothing special about him except stubbornness and scars. One evening, Vellani came to his room alone. She knocked on the door and waited for him to open it, even though she could have just walked in. She was always polite like that. "Can I come in?" she asked. Tiho stepped aside and let her enter. She looked around his small room with an expression he could not read. "This is where you live?" "Yes. It is very empty. I do not need much." She sat on the edge of his bed. He pulled out the only chair and sat across from her. The silence stretched between them, comfortable but heavy with something unspoken. "I need to ask you something," Vellani said finally, "and I need you to give me an honest answer." Tiho nodded. "Ask." "Why did you do it, that day, the truth?" He had been asked this question many times, by doctors, by reporters, by strangers in the corridor who recognized his face. He always gave the same answer: she was a child and he could not walk away. But Vellani was looking at him like she wanted more, like she knew there was something deeper he was not saying. So he told her the truth. "I was a medic in the war back on Earth," he said slowly. "Before I came here, I saw a lot of bad things, people dying, children hurt, families torn apart, and sometimes I could not help them. I was too tired, too scared, too weak. I looked away because it was easier than watching." He paused. His hands were shaking. He had never talked about this with anyone. "There was a village near the end of the war. The enemy came through and destroyed everything. I got there too late. There was a girl in the ruins. She was small, maybe 7 years old. She was trapped under the rubble and she was scared and she was calling for help." His voice broke. He stopped talking and stared at the floor. "What happened?" Vellani asked softly. "I ran. The enemy was coming back. I heard them. And I ran. I left her there. I left her alone." Tears fell down his face. He had not cried since that day. He had locked it away deep inside himself, in a place he never visited. "When I saw Lyra in that corridor, alone and scared and small, I saw her, the girl I left behind, and I decided I would not run again. I would not look away. I would not let another child be hurt because I was too afraid." Vellani stood up. She walked over to him and knelt down so that her eyes were level with his. Her silver face was close enough to touch. "You were not weak that day," she said quietly. "You were human. You were tired and afraid and trying to survive. That girl's death was not your fault." "It feels like it was." "I know, but it was not. And what you did for Lyra, you cannot change the past, but you changed her future. You gave her a chance to grow up. You gave me my daughter. Nothing can repay that." Tiho looked at her. Her purple eyes were soft and warm, and he realized she was crying too. Silver tears on silver skin. "My people believe humans are lesser," she said. "Short-lived, fragile, ruled by emotion rather than logic. For 500 years I believed what I was taught, and then I met you." She reached out and took his hand. Her skin was cool and smooth against his rough fingers. "You showed me what humans really are. You are not fragile. You are unbreakable, not because your bodies are strong, but because your spirits refuse to give up. You love so deeply that you will die for strangers. You hope so fiercely that you keep getting up when anyone else would stay down." She squeezed his hand. "My people live for 500 years, and we rarely do anything worth remembering. You live for 80, and in 37 minutes, you did something that will be remembered forever." Tiho did not know what to say. He just held her hand and let the silence fill the space between them. I have one more question, Villani said. Ask. Will you stay, not for Lyra, not for the debt, not for anything except yourself? Will you stay with us? Ti-Ho looked at her. He saw the hope in her eyes, fragile and new, like a flower trying to grow in winter. He saw the loneliness she had carried since her husband died. He saw the love she had for her daughter and the fear of raising her alone. And he saw something else, something just for him, a warmth that had been growing slowly over the past 2 months, hidden under gratitude and obligation and cultural differences. She was not asking him to be a guard or a protector or a replacement for what she had lost. She was asking him to be part of something new. Yes, he said, his voice was quiet but steady, I will stay. Villani smiled. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Outside his window, the stars burned cold and distant. Ships came and went from the station. Aliens of 100 species lived their lives without knowing that something had changed in a small room in the worker section. But something had changed. A broken human and a lonely Norian had found each other. A child had gained a protector who would never leave her. A family had been born from pain and sacrifice, and the stubborn refusal to let fear win. Ti-Ho still carried his scars. He still had nightmares about the girl he could not save. He was still just a cargo worker from Earth, with rough hands and tired eyes. But now he had somewhere to belong, someone to protect, something worth living for. And in a galaxy full of ancient species and powerful empires, that was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.